Hi you guys, it's Haley here from the Gale Library in Newton, here with you Monday, 4 p.m. with Fablehaven. We are over halfway through Fablehaven right now, and this week we are on chapter 12. Chapter 12. It's called Inside the Barn. Now, if you remember last week on chapter 11, the gist of the story so far is Grandpa's gone missing along with the housekeeper. Dale has been turned into a statue of some kind, and the kids, Kendra and Seth, are on a desperate mission to try and find Lena, the housekeeper, and their grandpa Sorensen. So last week they ended up following some spiky footprints and ended up on an ogress's lair and were saved by some satyrs. And they were last seen running away, trying to get back home. So this chapter is called Inside the Barn. Like I say, it's chapter 12 of Brandon Moore's Fablehaven, chapter 12 of 19. If you've missed the previous 11 chapters, you guys can go onto our YouTube channel to listen to them so you can catch up. And you can just go to YouTube and Google and type in the search, Gale Library Newton, and all of our videos will pop up. So Brandon Moore's Fablehaven, chapter 11, I will just give you a recap of how it ended. The satyrs stopped retreating. Doran held out an extended arm. "There's a path over there. When you reach it, go right," Newell said. "That will get you started in the right direction. Give our best to Stan when he turns up." The satyrs hastily turned and dashed off into the trees. So if you remember, what happened was Seth and Kendra asked them for help, and they said they were a bit worried. They were very coy, and they said no, they were too busy, and they sent them on their way, so they didn't want to help them. So chapter 12, Inside the Barn. Kendra and Seth located the path just as the satyrs had instructed, and soon re-encountered the nickel-sized holes that served as the perfect trail of breadcrumbs towards a home. "Those goat guys were idiots," Seth said. "They did save us from the ogress," Kendra reminded him. "They could have helped us rescue Grandpa, but they blew us off." He wore a scowl as they continued along the path. As they neared the yard, they heard an inhuman growl again. I don't know if you remember from last time, when they came out of the house, they heard this really weird growl sound. It was the same sound they'd heard while exiting the basement, only louder than ever. They halted. The perplexing sound was coming from up ahead, a long, plaintive moan, comparable to a blast from a foghorn. Seth dug some of the remaining salt out of his pocket and rushed ahead. With their quickened pace, they were soon back at the edge of the yard. Everything appeared normal. They saw no hulking behemoth capable of the enormous sound they had heard. "You know that salt didn't do much to the satyr," Kendra whispered. "It probably only burns the bad creatures," he replied. "I think the ogre lady picks them up. It was all mixed in with the dirt by then. You saw it torch those guys last night." They waited, hesitant to enter the yard. "Now what?" Kendra asked. The mighty groan resounded across the yard, nearer and louder. The shingles on the barn rattled. "It's coming from the barn," Seth said. "We never looked there," Kendra said. "I didn't think about it." The monstrous groan blared a third time. The barn shuddered. Birds flew up from the eaves. "You think something took Grandpa and Lena into the barn?" Kendra asked. "Sounds like it's still there. Grandpa told us never to enter the barn." "I think I'm already grounded," Seth said. "No, I mean, what if he keeps ferocious creatures in there? It might have nothing to do with his disappearance." "It's our best chance. Where else are we going to look? We have no other clues. The tracks are a dead end. At least we should try and take a peek inside." Seth stared at the barn, with Kendra following reluctantly behind. The towering structure rose a good 5 stories tall, topped by a weather vane in the shape of a bull. Kendra had never studied it for entrances until now. She noted the obvious set of large double doors in the front, along with some smaller access doors along the side. The barn creaked and then started shaking as if there were an earthquake. The sound of timbers splitting filled the air, followed by another mournful moan. Seth glanced back at Kendra. Something huge was in there. A few moments later, the barn grew still. Chains and a heavy padlock bound the double doors in front, so Seth moved along the side of the building quietly, trying to find smaller doors. All were locked. The barn had several windows, but the lowest were 3 stories off the ground. They stealthily circled the entire building, finding no unlocked doors. There weren't even any cracks or peepholes. "Grandpa sealed this place up tight," Kendra whispered. We may have to make some noise to get inside," Seth said. He started circling the building again. I'm not sure that would be smart. I'll wait until the barn thing starts shaking again. Seth sat down in front of the small door, little more than 3 feet high. Minutes passed. I think it knows we're waiting, Kendra said. You're just bad luck. Stop saying that. A fairy glided over to them. Seth tried to shoo it away. Get out of here! The fairy effortlessly dodged his shooing motions. The more vigorously he waved her away, the closer she came. Stop it! You're just egging her on, Kendra said. I'm so sick of fairies. Then ignore her. Maybe she'll leave. He stopped paying attention to the fairy. She came right up behind his head. When the proximity earned no reaction, the fairy landed on his head. Seth slapped at her, missing as she wove around his intended blows. Just when he jumped to his feet to chase her, the booming groan came again. The little door trembled. Seth plopped back down and started ramming the door with both feet. The moaning muffled most of the impact's noise. On the 5th kick, the edge of the little door split and swung open. Seth rolled away from the opening, and Kendra stepped aside as well. Digging in his pocket, Seth withdrew the remnants of his salt. Want some? He mouthed. Kendra accepted some salt. A minute or two later, the deafening moans ceased. Seth gestured for Kendra to wait. He crept through the small door. Kendra waited, squeezing the salt in her palm. Seth reappeared in the opening, wearing an indestructible expression. You have to see this, he said. What? Don't worry. Just come look. Kendra ducked through the doorway. The enormous barn contained just one cavernous room with a few closets around the perimeter. The entire room was dominated by a single, gigantic cow. Not what I expected, Kendra murmured in disbelief. She gawked at the colossal bovine in amazement. The huge head was up near the rafters, 40, 50 feet in the air. A hayloft spanning the entire side of the building served as a feed box. The cow's hooves were the size of hot tubs. The tremendous udder was absolutely bulging. Milk beaded and dripped from the teats almost the size of punching bags. The cow cocked his head, staring down at the newcomers in the barn. It let out a long moo, making the barn shake simply by shifting its stance. Holy cow, Kendra muttered. You can say that again. I doubt Grandpa will be running out of milk any time soon. We're friends, Kendra called up at the cow. The cow tossed its head and began munching from the hayloft. Why haven't we heard of this thing before? Seth wondered. She probably never moos. I think she's in pain. Kendra observed. See how swollen the udder looks? I bet it could fill a swimming pool. Seriously. Somebody probably milks her every morning, and nobody did today, said Seth. They stood and stared. The cow continued munching from the hayloft. Seth pointed at the back of the barn. Look at that manure. Sick. The world's biggest cow pie. You would notice that. The cow let out another bellowing complaint, the most insistent so far. They clamped their hands over their ears until the lowing stopped. We probably should try to milk her, Kendra said. How are we supposed to do that? Seth cried. There has to be a way. They must do it all the time. We can't even reach her thingies. I bet that cow would tear this place apart if she wanted. I mean, look at her. She keeps getting more upset. Her udder looks like it's about to burst. Who knows what kind of power she has? Her milk lets people see fairies. The last thing we need is a giant magical cow running loose. Could be total mayhem. Folding his arms, Seth surveyed the task. This is impossible. We need to search the closets. Maybe they have special tools. What about Grandpa? We're out of leads, said Kendra. If we don't milk this cow, we could end up with a new disaster on our hands. In the closets, they found a variety of tools and equipment, but no obvious gear for milking a cow. There were empty barrels all around, in and out of closets, which Kendra figured must be used for catching milk. In one closet, Kendra found a couple of A-frame ladders. These might be all we need, she said. How do we even get our hands around those things? We don't. There has to be a gigantic milking machine, Seth said. I'm not seeing anything like that, but it might work if we just hug and drop. Are you nuts? Why not? Kendra said, motioning between the teats and the floor. It isn't that far from the nipples to the ground. We're not going to use the barrels. No, we can waste the milk. Barrels would just get in the way. We just need to relieve the pressure. What if she steps on us? She hardly has any room to move. If we stay under the udder, we'll be fine. They dragged the ladders into position, one beside each of the two teats on the same side of the mammoth cow. They climbed the ladders, only one standing rung from the top, were they high enough to grip the teat near the udder. Seth stood waiting while Kendra tried to get into position. These feel wobbly, she said. Balance. She hesitated, stood upright. It felt a lot higher than it had looked from the ground. You ready? No. I bet this barn will hold her. We at least have to try. Hug the thingy and slide down. Hug the thingy and slide down? Seth asked. We'll trade off. You, then me, then you, then me. And then we'll do the other side. How about you start it? You're better at this sort of stuff, Kendra said. That's true. I milk a lot of gigantic cows. I'll show you my trophies sometimes. Seriously, you start, urged Kendra. What if it hurts her? I don't think we're big enough. I'm more worried that we're not going to be able to get any out. So should I just squeeze as hard as I should just squeeze as hard as I can, Seth confirmed. Sure. Once I do it, you'll do it, and then we'll just keep going as fast as we can. And if I ever find a gigantic cow milking trophy, I'll buy it for you, Kendra offered. I'd rather we kept our little secret. You ready? Go for it. Hesitantly, Seth placed a hand against the huge teat. The cow mooed, and he recoiled, crouching and grabbing the ladder with both hands to steady himself. Kendra tried to stay balanced as she laughed. Finally, the foghorn moo ended. I changed my mind, Seth said. I'll count to 3, said Kendra. You go first, or I'm not doing it. I almost fell over and wet my pants at the same time. 1, 2, 3. Seth stepped off the ladder, embracing the teat. He slid down it and fell to the floor along with an impressive jet of milk. Kendra stepped off and hugged the teat as well. Even with her holding tightly, it slid through her embrace faster than she expected. She hit the floor with warm milk already soaking her jeans. Seth was on his way back up the ladder. I'm already disgusted, he said, stepping off and sliding down again. This time he kept his feet when he landed. Kendra went up and slid down again, hugging as hard as she could. She descended a little more slowly, but still fell over when she hit the floor. Already milk was everywhere. Soon they fell into a rhythm. Both of them landed on their feet most of the time. The engorged udder hung low, and they got better at using the teat hug to control their fall. Milk gushed copiously. While they were sliding, the teats sprayed like fire hoses. It must have been at least 70 jumps each before the output began to slacken. Other side, Kendra gasped, breathing hard. My arms are dead, Seth complained. We have to hurry. They scooted the ladders over and repeated the process. Kendra tried to pretend she was on a surreal playground where the kids waded in milk instead of sand and slid down thick, meaty poles. Kendra focused on climbing the ladder and landing as lightly as possible. She worried that if either action became routine, she could have a bad accident, spraining an ankle, breaking a bone, or worse. At the first sign that the flow of milk was slackening, they collapsed in exhaustion, not worried about lying in the milk because their clothes and hair were already drenched. Both of them gulped air desperately. Kendra put a hand to her neck. My heart is beating like a jackhammer. I thought I was going to puke. That was so foul, complained Seth. I'm more tired than sick. Think about it. You're dripping with warm, raw milk while your face rubs down a cow nipple about 100 times. More than that. We doused the whole barn, Seth said. I'm never drinking milk again, ever. I'm never going to the playground, Kendra vowed. What? Hard to explain. Seth scanned the area under the cow. The floor has drains, but I don't think much of the milk is going to go down. I saw a hose. I doubt the cow would like rotting milk all over the place. Kendra sat up and squeezed milk out of her hair. It was the best workout I've ever had. I'm dead. If I did that every day, I'd look like Hercules, said Seth. You mind grabbing the ladders? Not if you do the hosing. The hose was long and had good water pressure, and the drain seemed to have plenty of capacity. Flushing the milk away turned out to be the easiest part of the process. Seth had Kendra hose him off and then returned the favor. From the time the milking began in earnest, the cow made no more noise and displayed no more interest in them. They called for Grandpa and Lena in the barn, just to be sure, starting with small voices to avoid startling the cow, and gradually building to shouts. As had been their lot all day, their calls went unanswered. Should we go back to the house? Kendra asked. I guess. It will be dark before long. I'm tired and hungry, and we should look for food. They left the barn. The day was waning. You have a big tear in your shirt, Kendra said. I ripped it while we were running from the ogress. I have a pink one you can borrow. This will work fine, Seth said, once it dries off. The pink one would hide you just as well as a camouflage, Kendra said. Are all girls as brainless as you? You're telling me a green shirt will make you invisible to monsters? No, less visible. Less is the point. Less than your blue one. I guess I should find a green one too then. That was the end of chapter 12. That was the quickest chapter I think we've read inside the barn. Chapter 13 next week is called An Unexpected Message. So we will be back at 4 o'clock with chapter 13 of Fablehaven. Have a great week, you guys. Enjoy the sun tomorrow. It's going to be gorgeous. And I will see you next week. Take care, my friends. Bye.